Thank you. So I'm going to be sharing a screen with you guys. And today we are speaking about survival skills to avoid burnout. Let me just make sure that it's bright enough for you guys. I want to just talk a little bit about the Lighthouse, although I just did, so I'm not going to spend too much time on it, but I do want to make sure that everybody heard me when I said that you guys are more than welcome to join some of our support groups. Our support groups are led by senior clinicians, and we have support groups for basically, so many types of issues, including infertility or job loss or single parenthood, cancer support groups, student support groups. So I would really encourage you guys to go on our social media or go on our website to actually learn more about some of these support groups. We also have community talks that we're always running. So I will share a link about of my social media that you guys can follow. And then I usually post a lot of that stuff on there for you guys, and I send links to whoever wants to be there. So again, like I said, it's a very big agenda of ours. And I do want to say that the support is extended now to beyond the UAE because of Zoom and all this technology that we have just gotten very, very savvy at, thanks to COVID. So I'm going to break this talk down into just a really quick framing and then moving into crisis. Now, I did put COVID overwhelm on here because there's a whole lot of things that we have felt as a result of COVID that we have never felt before. So I want to just name some of those things. We know from research that when you name it, you tame it. And there's a whole lot of feelings going on inside of us that we actually can't understand, we feel overwhelmed by. But once you start to name all the different losses that we've gone through and all the different issues that are probably under threat or where we feel vulnerable, all of a sudden we say, okay, now I can have more self-compassion for myself. Now, every single thing that I'm going to share with you today is going to be something that you can do in times of any crisis. Now, there are all sorts of things that, get thrown our way, just because that's how life is. It doesn't come announced and it just happens to us. Whether you're going through a breakup or a divorce or a job loss or a move or a death in the family, these changes that I'm about to introduce to you are about building emotional resilience and having these kinds of survival skills in place, and then forget about everything else and just focus on these things. So hopefully you guys have this saved somewhere and you can just hit the go button any single time that you feel overwhelmed, because this is what research shows will give you containment if you follow through as to what I say. And a lot of the things I'm saying, guys, are actually quite simple, but they're not easy. The simplest things are actually the hardest things for us these days, like sleeping or sitting and doing nothing. These things are absolutely very, very difficult for us. So just because it looks easy doesn't mean, or just because it's simple doesn't mean it's going to be easy for us. So let's talk a little bit about why we are overwhelmed, okay? We are overwhelmed because, one, let's go back to our Neanderthal days, early times on the planet, hundreds of thousands of years ago. We are actually wired to detect threat. Human beings would not have made it this far on this planet for as long as we have if we did not wake up every morning and scan the environment for all the dangers that are out there. Think about all the dangers that went wrong, all the things that went wrong yesterday. These are all things that are really hardwired into our brain. And so when we actually, as we evolved, obviously, we're no longer maybe in such great threat. We're not getting attacked by lions and tigers and bears, but we are still under a lot of stress. And so this amygdala is actually getting activated due to all sorts of reasons. But I want to say that our wiring is to detect threat. Now, as we evolved, our ability to reason, our ability to be creative actually developed with it. And just with our thoughts alone, we can actually activate our threat. So what do I mean by this? I could be sitting right here in the comfort of my home, in a very nice environment, sitting, talking to you guys, and all of a sudden I start thinking about my mother. Oh, why, did she wear a mask? Oh gosh, she's in another country and I'm not with her. And all of a sudden my heart starts to race, and as if my survival is now under threat because my mother's survival is under threat. So we can actually, the human being is the only mammal on the planet that can activate the fight or flight response with just our thoughts alone. All the other animals on the planet, you have koalas and you have, zebras, they see the lion and they run. And as soon as the lion is out of sight, they go back to homeostasis. We are not like that. When we see the lion, or when we have a negative thought, or maybe someone cut us off in the parking, or maybe we got in a car accident, or maybe we lost our job, or maybe something else happened to us that was not very good, we experience it in the moment, and then we think about it at night. Then we call our friend, then we call someone else, then we're thinking about it the next night. And so this is where this is what's happening with us thanks to COVID. And now you guys are all, you've been in lockdown, and there gives you a lot more time to actually sit and think about all the things that you probably have been distracting yourself from. We have words like new normal, social distancing, vaccine that are very, very triggering. If you look at this triangle here on your screen, this is the Maslow hierarchy of needs. And all of our basic human needs feel very, very compromised thanks to COVID. Now, just our food, water, clothing, where am I gonna, is the grocery store gonna have enough food? Am I gonna be able to go out? Or am I gonna get sick? Our health needs, or am I gonna lose my job? What if my, partner loses a job? Or what if I have to take care of my elderly parents who get sick? Our need for love, belonging, connection, intimacy. Intimacy does not happen when we have masks on and we can't really see each other's faces when we go out, and we're longing for this kind of human connection, but we're not necessarily feeling that from each other. And then we have to remember that our whole life, we have known life to be one way. We go to school, in the school. We go to work, in the work. We go to the gym, in the gym. We go to the park, in the park. We go exercise in the outdoors, or in the gym, or etc. So all of these things, all of these habits, all of these daily routines actually shape our identity. And what happened with COVID is that we actually felt very displaced and disoriented as a result of COVID, because everything went from the outside in, and all of a sudden we are not feeling like ourselves again. We have to, our home, which was for rest, recreation, or, relaxation, we actually are now using it to work, to study, to teach our kids, to exercise, and it no longer has that sense of safety. So we feel very displaced and disoriented as a result of this. And never before in the history of man, whether it was the plague or the Spanish flu or has anyone experienced something like what we just went through. Because even in the time of the Spanish flu, they actually were not teaching kids from their home. Everybody just stopped, right? Life stopped for a while. But here we're having to operate just like we were already operating, but all of a sudden we're now indoors and we don't have some of the other things that actually were sort of giving us our sense of identity or giving us a sense of pleasure. So this is why we're all feeling overwhelmed, and we have endured in the last 6 months so many changes. There has been a loss that we have experienced and a collective grief on another level. We have lost our sense of safety, our normalcy, seeing extended family in person, seeing people's faces, our sense of freedom, our sense of regular routines, our sense of personal agency. Our boundaries have been lost. Our future plans have been lost. Seeing people, our friends in person, like going and hanging out, just, hey, you want to meet up? And now everything has to be with, oh, did you take a COVID test? And can we go out? And maybe not. And you guys obviously just got the news today, so maybe it's a little bit different for you guys. But, you know, we've lost things like rituals, like weddings and funerals and, you know, these regular things that we used to just take for granted, actually. And now all of a sudden we're grieving that. And so I just want to name that what we have gone through has never happened before. If you feel overwhelmed, it is very normal. It is very, very normal for you to feel overwhelmed because no one's ever done this before. I don't want to use the word unprecedented because it's like annoying to hear it now, but really never before in the history. So now I want to give you some things that you can work on in order to adapt to the situation with a bit more resilience. Now, I want to say two things before I get started on this. One, you do not, so whenever we experience a stressor, so let's just say COVID, or let's just say my kids are now all having to study from home, or let's just say I'm going through a divorce. The minute I experience a stressor, it usually takes the psyche about 6 weeks, 40 days for me to get the concept right in my brain. Oh, okay. Now I can still be feeling anxious. I can still be feeling nervous, but just for the brain to sort of come online and say, okay, this is my new reality, it usually takes 6 weeks. And within that 6 weeks, we can be feeling all sorts of things. And that we can be feeling anxious, we can be feeling depressed. And I would say that that is qualified as an adjustment disorder in our ICD-10 codes. When we're looking for a clinical interview, we do not say depressive episode or generalized anxiety disorder if there has been a stressor within 6 to 8 weeks prior to them showing up. So if you're feeling heightened levels of anxiety, of course, you still want to get clinical support, but know that within the 6 weeks is actually quite normal for you to feel completely sort of disoriented and discombobulated, okay? The second thing I want to say is that when you are faced with a stressor, your number one and number two goal is psychological and physical safety. Every single thing else can actually sit on the wayside. All the books you ever wanted to read, all the art that you wanted to complete, which is what most people did when COVID started, is that, oh, now I have all the time in the world, let me just start to do all these projects. And then they burnt out because they actually didn't factor in the adjustment that they're going to have to do. Even if you don't have kids, even if you're by yourself at home, there's an adjustment. Your life just turned inside out, outside in type of. So you can't put on too much pressure in the beginning. Be bored. Make room in your mind for your brain and body to sort of adjust to this new reality. Okay. And especially even more so when you have children that you are overseeing. So what's the first thing I'm going to ask you to do? Now, if you don't do these things, you might as well tune out for the rest of the talk, because this is going to be the most important element of you surviving a crisis, is you've got to bring it down to the body. When we are looking after the body actually will be able to carry the heart and the mind, which are spinning out of control. But if your body is spinning out of control, there's no container for the mind and the heart to do what it's able to do. So you're gonna want to make sure that your stress threshold for your physical body is very, very good. How can you do that? The first thing I'm going to ask you to do is I'm going to ask you to become aware of your vagus nerve. So let me just give you a 101 on the vagus nerve. You see this man that we've drawn here? He has a brain. This brain is connected to something called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve it's Latin for wandering nerve. And really, you know, it's the most beautiful, miraculous thing to see when you actually start to think about how the brain and the body are literally connected to each other. Imagine the vagus nerve is a two-way highway. Things are going from the brain all the way down to the body, and things are going from the body all the way up to the brain. And this is how the brain and the body are communicating with each other. The vagus nerve also is basically the battery and like the juice for the rest and digest system. So when we are under stress and when we feel very, very anxious, our fight or flight system has gone off. Remember, I told you guys we're wired to detect threat, and that means our amygdala has gone off, and it's our fight or flight response. That fight or flight response is actually the opposite of that is your rest and digest response. That rest and digest response is going to be a whole lot faster if you have good vagal tone. Vagal tone can actually be increased. So literally, if you're sitting there and you're meditating and you're saying, I'm going to increase my vagal tone right now, or if you're chanting or humming, you know, a lot of all religious traditions, whether it be Islam, whether it be Christianity, whether it be Buddhism, you actually have chanting and humming that go along with it, because humming and chanting actually vibrate through to the vagal tone. So when you say Alif, Lam, Mim, if you do that, that actually is vibrating into your vagal tone. It will bring you into a state which is a little bit more zen than where you started. So humming and chanting is actually really beautiful. Every religion has an amen, amin, om. So you see how all of these things are actually exercising your vagal tone, but also just bringing you into a more meditative state. Gargling is actually really good for your vagus nerve. And what you want to do is you want to gargle with cold water, and you want to gargle till there's tears coming out of your mouth. So vigorously. This is not like you're really doing it as a stimulating of the vagus nerve. Cold exposure. So if you put ice in the back of your neck is actually really good for your vagal tone. Laughing and socializing is also very good for your vagus nerve. So it's all good for your soul, but it's actually really good for your vagus nerve. The next thing I want to talk about is sleep. Sleep is the single most important thing that you can do for your brain and your body. When sleep is compromised, literally everything in your body is compromised. Your brain is compromised, your body is compromised, your mood is compromised, your relationships are compromised. You are not in your right state when you have not gotten 7 to 8 hours of sleep between the hours of 10 and 6. So find a way to get more sleep. The number one threat to our sleep is our blue lights. These phones all have a blue light behind them. Computers, iPads, HD TVs all have a blue light behind them. This blue light sends a signal to the brain that says, do not release melatonin into this brain, because you need to be alert. And it's the same light that the surgeon has over their head, you know, that bright white light. It actually is something that we're staring at all day long, which is fine if you're looking at it during the day. But when the night comes and it's still that bright, the circadian rhythms are being thrown completely off, because when it's night, we're supposed to go to sleep. But if it's bright, then the brain is confused and saying, nope, it's not night yet. So we're going to keep on, hold the melatonin. Then when we close our eyes and then it's dark, then the brain says, now it's time. So it takes an hour sometimes for the melatonin to release. You are not getting that deep restorative sleep. And that means you see those little brains at the bottom of your screen. That is actually an fMRI that we recreated by drawing it. But the amygdala, which is the fight or flight center in your brain, is actually 60% more activated when you are getting less than 7 hours of sleep. 60% more activated. You literally are walking around with half a cup of energy, and you're trying to manage all of these different stressors that are being thrown your way. It's just really not very possible. So you're going to be a lot more reactive, a lot more agitated, a lot more anxious, a lot more depressed if you don't get that sleep. Next thing I'm going to talk about is that you want to eat nutritious foods. You are what you eat. Okay? So there is a truth to this, that you are what you eat. And the gut, they actually say, is the second brain. Did you know that 90% of your happy chemical the serotonin, which is an antidepressant, is actually produced in your gut. If your gut is sad, your brain is sad, 90%, okay? And again, the vagus nerve is connected to the gut. It's connected to your heart, your gut, your liver, your kidneys, your lungs. It's connected to all of these things. So if this is not happy, this is not happy. So you want to limit your caffeine, your sugar. I don't have to say alcohol, but just limit all these things that actually are not very, very good for you. And when you eat sugar, it suppresses your immune system for the following 6 to 8 hours. All these antibacterials that we're using, they're killing off the good bacteria in our body. So what you want to do is you want to supplement that with probiotics and other, prebiotics as well. You also want to make sure that you're hydrating 2 liters a day. This is just like, these are non-negotiable, guys. And if you Google the symptoms of dehydration and you Google the symptoms of depression, there is a big overlap. Low concentration, low motivation, low mood, low energy. All of these are symptoms of depression, but they're also symptoms of dehydration. Exercising 3 to 4 times a week, where you are rigorously exercising, where your heart rate is elevated. It's not like pounding out of your chest, but you are actually like kind of breathing. You want to try to do that. And don't do it so you can lose weight. Do it because it's actually good for your brain, and it actually is going to keep you strong. Now, you imagine yourself as a soldier, and that soldier needs to be physically fit, right? You also want to check your hormonal levels. You want to do your vitamin D test. When times of crises hit, I do it every 6 months. I actually engage, check my magnesium level, check my cortisol level, check my DHE level, because I might be drinking more caffeine. Caffeine actually interacts with magnesium and doesn't let it absorb. All of these things actually start to play in, and we are just one very sophisticated system. One of these things goes off, the whole system goes off. Just like if you sprain your ankle, it's not just localized in your ankle. Then your knee starts to compensate. Then the opposite hip will compensate. That opposite hip will actually, and the next thing you know, you actually might have sinus pains as a result of the ankle. So everything starts to compensate for each other. But this is the number one and most important slide of this whole talk. If you don't do these things, nothing else that you do is going to matter. And prayer and meditation, I said that first thing. Prayer is prayer, and then meditation is meditation. So more like dhikr is going to be a meditative state, or the dua is going to be the meditative state, where you can actually just sort of move into a rhythm of something. That's what we're looking for. So prayer is important, meditation is important, and we know all the science that says how spirituality is really, really helpful for having a better state of being, well-being. The next thing is going to be the mindset. Now that we've gotten the body, in strong shape, what we want to do is we want to really think about our mindset. There is, in popular culture and in more recent culture, this idea that we shouldn't be sad, this happiness, and everybody should be positive, and we should be happy all the time. And no, life has ups and life has downs, and we need to know how to ride the ups and ride the downs just the same. We don't want to necessarily feel like this is the only thing that will last, or this is the only thing that will last. So one thing I would say is the mindset about low feelings is going to be okay. I've had people ask me in the last 6 months that I've been doing this, like, okay, well, how do I make myself feel better? Like, what do you mean by better? Well, I just want to feel good. Okay, well, you can only feel as good as you can given the circumstances that you are in. You cannot feel as good as you can ever feel in the situation that you might be in. So we actually have to calibrate ourselves to COVID times and say, this is good. This is good for now. This is as good as it's going to get for me for now. And that might be that I'm not like elated and I'm not, absolutely bouncing off the walls. You don't have to. These are hard times. People are suffering. We're aware of their suffering. It's okay for us to actually feel sad and be able to have rituals around that sadness. And so that's going to be one thing. Don't fight the feelings. We must accept the ups and downs and embrace them equally, because in every down there's a lesson, in every up there's a lesson, and nothing lasts forever. We all know that. Also saying things like, this is happening for me rather than to me. Oh my God, why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? You see how that language is that of a victim. When you say this is happening for me, why is this happening for me? All of a sudden I move into more of a wise state, which is, I'm here and this was brought to me so I can learn a lesson from this. And if it was brought to me, then I'm sure that I can bring myself to it as well. I will bring my whole self to this and I will learn something from this. So the idea becomes that you thrive within the state, not just, sort of grabbing onto each day and trying to get through, although you can survive it just the same, it's fine. But it really is about, it would be a really big shame that the whole world came to a halt. Our lives came to a halt and we didn't let it change us in any way. And so how can you let this change you, soften you, make you more grateful, make you more appreciative? That's the mindset you want to bring to a crisis. Choose your words very carefully. The power of I am is very, very big. When you say things like, I am so exhausted, or I am so, tired, or I am so sad, or I am so depressed, these types of things actually have a huge power. You want to frame it differently. The power of I am is anything that follows I am is actually going to come looking for you. So when you want to say, I am depressed, you want to say, I have depression, or I have depressive feelings. When you have something, you can unhave it. When you are something, you cannot unbecome it. And so you want to distance yourself a little bit so you can actually look at it differently. When you say, I have to go to the gym rather than I get to go to the gym, right? I get to cook for my children. I get to work. I get to read rather than I have to read, I have to cook, I have to work. When you say I have to, immediately it puts you in a victim stance. When you say I get to, it spins it and says, I am now grateful because there's other people who don't get to do this. I'm exhausted versus I had a productive day. So anytime the feeling, unless you really are exhausted, it's okay to name that, but it really is, the language has frequency. And if you really had a productive day, I think it's important. You can even say, I'm exhausted and I had a productive day. This is not to deny your feelings. It actually is to frame them a little bit differently, especially in times of crisis. I'm choosing, I get to, I had a productive, like these types of things actually frame the narrative. And this is coming from narrative therapy. And narrative therapy basically says that we live our lives in stories. If I tell me about when you were 6 years old, you're going to tell me a story about when you were 6 years old. Based on the questions I ask you, we can retell that story and make it a story of a victim or make it a story of a survivor. Both went through the same thing, but it's about what story you choose to tell and what words you choose to tell that story. So really it becomes the frame with which you look through. Another thing would be to build your inner house. Now, for me, this is really, really important. And everything that I do on social media has to do with our inner world, our inner journey, our inner experience, reflection, because I am like the counter voice as to everything else in the world, which is really, really just focused on the outside material world and, things being projected onto us and social media and, the noise of the outside world. And so just know the difference, that there's a difference between being alone and loneliness. So I could be sitting alone in my room, but I'm not lonely. I'm not lonely because I have a relationship with God. I have a relationship with myself. So I am not alone, or I am not lonely. I am just alone. Okay. And then also knowing the difference between solitude versus isolation. There's not a single great person in the history of man that has not spent time in solitude. Whether you take the prophets, they went into the desert, they went into the cave, they went up into the mountain. Whether you take Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, who went into the fields, who went into their cabin, Socrates, Aristotle, Nietzsche, everybody, they had an attic, they had a chamber, etc., etc. They all had a place where they would go and sit. They all were loved people. Many of them, most of them were loved. It's not like they had like toxic family members around, but they still went, and they went up or they went away to hear the voice of God. And so that's what we want to do, is we want to create periods of solitude where we start to build a relationship with ourselves inside of ourselves. And this is really important to do in times of crisis, but also just to do, period, because then you're never alone. Then you are never actually feeling like there's not someone with you all the time. So cultivating that relationship with the higher power, but also cultivating that relationship with yourself, because it cannot just be one or the other. It needs to also be inside of you. Okay. Focus on what you can control and then do something about it. Now, in times of crisis, there will be things that happen. Oh my God, there's all this stuff that's not in our control. Will I lose my job? Not in my control. Will the economy shut down? Not in my control. Will there be a lockdown? Not in my control. What's going to happen that is in my control? Okay, I can manage my finances. All right, we're all worried about our finances. Take out a piece of paper, take a piece of paper out and start writing down finances. I'm worried about my finances. Okay, how much money do I have? What can I save? What can I sell? What is my contingency plan, etc., etc. When you do this, the brain says, all right, she's got a plan. And this is what you want to do. You don't want to just keep looping in your head. You don't want to keep looping in your head about the things that you're worried about. So yeah, a lot of people have said focus on what you can control, but the most important thing is do something in the real world about it, because the same part of our brain that worries is the part that does something. It's part of the motor cortex. So it actually feels like you did something about it when you worry, but you haven't done anything about it. So you just keep looping and looping and looping. When you actually do something about it, then the brain says, okay, now it's done. And actions are empowering. They counteract fear. They give you a sense of agency. And please do not wait for motivation to do this. Do not wait till, oh, okay, well, I have more energy, I will. The motivation comes after you start. Don't wait to be motivated to exercise. The motivation will come after you start. Don't wait for motivation to start your business. Start the business and the motivation will come, as long as your intention is in the right place. Next thing is going to be to make the most of it. You're going to need to have a personal strategy and a family strategy. If you have a family around, if you are living by yourself, it would be very, very important to have a strategy of some kind. Like, what is the next month going to look like? Or what is this week going to look like? And having a routine. Now, routine is the antidote to uncertainty. Okay, if I have a routine, there's some part of my psyche that actually just knows what's going to happen tomorrow, because there's a rhythm to my day. Now, if routine feels too rigid for you, just use the word rhythm. And you know, God says, if you want to understand your nature and what you should be doing, you should look at nature outside of you. There's a time and a place and a rhythm to everything, right? To everything. Everything has a rhythm. Everything has a time. Everything goes a certain way. And that's what we want to move into our day with. We want to have a rhythm to our day. And when usually people are going through a crisis, we actually tell them the most important thing you can do, especially if you have children around, you get a routine in place. You're going to wake up at this time. You're going to have breakfast at this time. You're going to sit in school at this time. You're going to, exercise at this time. You're going to watch TV at this time. Every Wednesday, we're going to do a movie. Every Thursday, we're going to play a game. All of a sudden, kids start to feel like, okay, I got this. I'm in my groove. It's going to be very important that part of your routine actually involves dressing for the moment. Now, there's a lot of us that might just throw on, an abaya over our pajamas and then get on with the day. Don't do that, because there is something called the enclothed cognition theory in psychology. And that enclothed cognition theory actually says that the brain is communicating, and the brain is a very associative device, and the clothes do make the man/woman. So if I dress a certain way, the signal is being sent. This is how you've got to show up. If you're showing up in your pajamas and then you're feeling lethargic all day long, it's because the brain is being told you need to be in bed, because the brain is very, very associative. There's often times where we remember something, we forget to do something, and then we walk all the way back to where we were when we thought it, because our brain had that thought in that sofa or on that sofa. And then, oh, here's the thought, and it comes back again. It's because the brain associates things. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that our associations are helping us, not getting in the way. As much as possible, own your morning and claim your evening, especially when it comes to working inside, indoors during COVID. You want to make sure that your morning routine is something that supports you. And I would just say, take 3 to 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be like this long 1-hour thing that you do, but take 3 to 5 minutes where you are just visualizing yourself going through the day. And what will you show up like? And what will it be experienced like by other people? And what kind of heart will you bring to it? And what kind of soul will you bring to it? That's what you want to do, 3 to 5 minutes, and then get on with it. And so find a way to just shut it down first thing in the morning and shut it down last thing in the evening. Speaking of shutting it down, you want to really limit your news and your sources. You want to limit it to 1 hour, once a day, one local, one global. There's so let me just ask you guys a question. If there was which newspaper would you actually pick? The flowers are blooming in Amsterdam, or the world is coming to an end? Let me answer that for you. You all would go pick up the world is coming to an end newspaper headlines. And that's what the news agencies have found out, that human beings are wired to detect threat. If there is a threat, they are more likely to click. So that's basically clickbait. And so they produce these very threatening kinds of headlines, because our survival is ensured if we are actually aware of that. And so we click on that, and then we end up panic reading and panic reading and panic reading. And turn off your notifications when it comes to all these different news channels, and just limit it to one local, one global, 1 hour, once a day. Do not try to read news all day long, because it's literally injecting you with fight or flight all day long. You don't want to do that. Imagine yourself, you have a cup of energy. Every morning you wake up. Some mornings, like yesterday, I did not get very good sleep. And so I'm waking up with this much energy today. So I have to be really conservative as to where I spend it. I will not be reading the news today. Whatever's going to happen is going to have to wait till tomorrow, because if I read the news and I get low about something, then I now have this much energy, and I have 4 children, and I need a lot of energy, and I live with my parents, and I live with my in-laws. And if I'm down to here, how am I going to be supporting anybody right now? So I'm conserving my energy. And so this is what you need to be thinking about. What gives me energy? So I need to keep pouring things into this pot. And then how much am I conserving? And when you are looking at your notifications all day long and panicking all day long, you're just not going to have the energy to do the things you really want to do. Very similar to that idea is that of conscious connections. When we hit COVID, everybody freaked out, and there was like a webinar like every second of the day. And I think more content has been created in the last 6 months than the history of man put together. There is something called the emotional contagion theory. And so people were just frantically connecting. Don't do that. Don't be part of communities or part of, WhatsApp groups or part of, social media followings that actually do not feed your soul in some way, especially in times of crisis. Like, fine, when you have a little bit more energy, go ahead and listen to the things that people are saying that might freak you out. But in the emotional contagion theory, it says that sure, COVID is contagious, but guess what is more contagious? What is more contagious is actually fear and anxiety. And so WhatsApp actually limited, because they saw the spreading of hysteria through WhatsApp. You hit one broadcast and hundreds of people get these messages. You hit one button and all of a sudden this post is now being sent to thousands of people, and they actually limited the amount of times you can actually forward a message. And this is like, we live in the world of fake news. You don't know what is true and what is not. So that's why, guys, be very, very conscious about your connections. Put boundaries around your toxicity. You know what? Listen, hey, Adam, thank you for coming over, but I really actually don't want to talk about COVID. We can talk about the paint drying on the wall, but we will not talk about COVID because I got my news today and I'd rather keep it light. That's it. We're drawing a boundary. If you happen to live with Adam, then you can actually say, Adam, you can get a therapist or get a support group, but I don't want to be part of, I don't want to delve and dive and, talk about these things anymore. It just really rattles me up, and I don't want to be rattled up anymore. I need to conserve my energy. That's it. Be creative about your online hangouts and develop a healthy plan to stay in touch with 3 to 5 people. Because as we know from science, social connections are the biggest mitigator of anxiety and depression and stress. If you feel socially supported, it is as if someone is carrying the load with you. But those social connections have to be real and they have to be true. So no, the 700 people on your Facebook do not count. It's those people that you go to when there is, trauma or drama, or you need to borrow money. Who are those people in your life? Those are the people you want to invest energy in and stay connected to. I'm almost to the end, guys, and then we can have some time for questions. So make sure that your home is a sanctuary, home, apartment, corner, whichever place that you're living in. Make sure that whatever little corner that belongs to you is a sanctuary. Declutter it. When you go into a spa, or when you go into a calm place, or when you go into one of these beaches that are completely, there are not a lot of stuff going around. When you go into a spa, they don't say, Dr. Saliha, we would like you to be calm. No, everything in that environment is calm. And I'm not saying you need to become Martha Stewart and actually spend a lot of money. I'm saying get rid of stuff. This stuff weighs you down. This stuff sucks up energy. Get rid of it. Get rid of it, and that will actually make your environment lighter. And research shows that when your environment is calm, you are going to be calm. If there is chaos, then there is chaos inside. Okay, really easy ways to do this. So I have these essential oils. They're not very expensive. There's ones that I have that are also rub-on. So these are all ways where you can burn these oils, burn candles. I have all sorts of aromatherapy that I recommend because I find it to be very, very soothing. When I walk into a room and lavender is burning, I'm immediately relaxed. Buy flowers for yourself from the grocery store. It could be 2 or 3 roses that you buy, or something where you say, when you look at it, you're actually like, oh, this is beautiful. And that's it. But the whole point is not just to buy flowers and not look at them. I literally spend time memorizing these flowers. And so memorizing flowers and memorizing smells and memorizing the tea that you're drinking, this will actually make your environment very, very calm. And so there might be chaos on the outside, but when you come home, you feel safe. The next thing is to stay very, very close to the moment. When in times of crisis, we can move into this what if, oh my God, what if? Yeah, what if is out there. Oh, remember when is back there. This is the past, this is the future. What is where you need to be. So what is the smallest step that I need to take in this moment? And literally the smallest step. And that could be, I need to fix my desk, then I need to go unlock the door, then I need to go check on my kids, then I need to make sure that lunch is served, then I need to, small. Next thing you know, it'll be 6 months that have gone by because you took it step by step. Don't think about, oh my God, what about the next few weeks? And what about the next few months? And oh my God, what's going to happen in January? And oh, February is not going to be the same. We don't know what's going to happen. No one could have predicted 2020 to look like this. So don't even try with the predictions anymore. What is the smallest step that you need to take right now. I actually put this on a Post-it. I stuck it on my bathroom mirror, and I stuck it on my laptop. And I just remind myself, what's the smallest step? So whenever I start to feel like I'm freaking out, I actually bring it down through the breath and say, what's the smallest step that I need to take right now? And then lastly, I will end on the same note that I began in, is that highlight the positive. Now, remember, I am not asking you to be positive, because this is not positive. This is actually negative. And so I don't want you to be inauthentic. I want you to be real. And if you're hurting, hurt. But there needs to be where you can hold grief in one hand and gratitude in the other. When you focus too much on grief and you don't hold gratitude in the other hand, then it can overwhelm you. But if you're just focusing on the positive and you're not naming the negative, then that can be very much rumbling inside of you, and it will erupt at some point. And so remember that we are wired for negativity. And also remember that there is something called neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity is where you can actually change the wiring of your brain. Now, we used to think that you stop growing by the time you're 7 and 9, and that's it. We're like, oh, you should teach whatever you want to teach to your children when they're young. Actually not true. We know from science now that till the very last day here on earth, you can actually exercise your brain and change your brain. But whatever you exercise will get stronger. If you exercise judgment, it will get stronger. If you exercise generosity, it will get stronger. If you exercise negativity, it will get stronger. If you exercise positivity, it will get stronger. But the catch here is that the negative muscle is a whole lot stronger than the positive muscle. It's actually even 4 to 1. And they say the negativity sticks like Velcro, where positivity is like Teflon. And so what you want to do is you want to really spend some time reviewing all the things that are positive. So imagine that you go to the gym. The gym actually, if you exercise the left muscle, the left arm, the left arm, the left arm, guess what arm is super strong? The left arm. We've been doing this for centuries. We've been doing it for all of history. We have been exercising the left arm because our survival depended on the left arm, which is the negative muscle in our brain. This is the positive muscle in our brain. It's just not getting much action. So what you want to do is you want to exercise the positive muscle, and the neurons that fire together wire together. And this is what I mean. Whatever you exercise will get stronger because there's a neural pathway in your brain that literally hooks when you exercise it again and again and again. And so what you want to do, so for example, I order flowers for myself twice a week. And when the flowers come, I stop the world and I sit with my flowers and I memorize those flowers. And they usually say it takes about 15 minutes for you to actually memorize that moment. So I will breathe and stare at the flowers and look at the petals and look at the stem and look at the bud and look at the leaves. All of these things I will do, and then I will get on with my day. 15, 20 seconds is what I'm talking about. If you are going through your day and the weather is really beautiful, you don't just want to say, oh gosh, the weather is really beautiful, and then you get on with it. No, bring all your 5 senses to that moment and be with that moment for 15 seconds. And then get on with it. Because remember, this is Teflon, the positive is Teflon, the negative is Velcro. And that's why if I ask you all today, you will most likely remember all the things that went wrong yesterday rather than all the things that went right. But there were hundreds of things that went right. And if you don't know what's going right, imagine your life without that thing. So when it's to, oh, my electricity worked today, my Wi-Fi worked today, I saw my kids today, my parents are healthy today, you know, I have water to drink today. Whatever you are engaging in, imagine your life without it. And then put, you know, there's like, there's one guy and he's like a Jesuit priest. He used to put these blue stickers on things that didn't exist. And like, he went to like India somewhere and in these, you know, in maybe third world countries where he didn't have running water. So he put a blue sticker everywhere where he was taking things for granted that don't actually exist in the rest of the world. And that reminded him to be grateful. So you can put little heart stickers everywhere in your house that remind you of all the things you have today, even though you don't have a whole lot of other things that you can be grateful for. And this is how you start to strengthen. And this is what makes you someone who can see the negative, because we want to see the negative, but someone who is also able to have an optimism to them, even in the worst of times. Grief and gratitude, hand in hand. This is what we call realistic optimism. And so that's what we want to work on. These are some of the apps that I recommend. If you go on my Instagram account, I actually have a whole lot more under the meditation section, and I have books that I recommend. And so these are just some of the things that I recommend. One of my favorite apps is actually Brain FM and Fit Mind, which are not on this, which I need to add to this, but breath work is great. Most of us are not breathing properly. Our diaphragm is absolutely weak. And so we're breathing from up here. So our body is not oxygenated. Our brain is not oxygenated. And that's why we hold a lot of tension in our body. So breath work is a great app to start building that muscle. These are some of the Instagram handles that I contribute to. So there's Lighthouse Arabia, there's my personal professional account. And then for parents, I have a Lighthearted Parenting and Smart Heart board game. And then for youth, there is Lighthouse Insight. And that's usually for like high school, college students. But I always tell parents to follow that one too, because I send stuff to my daughter who's not on social media. So I send it to her on email, or I will send a snapshot of it to her iMessage. And that way, you know, it keeps you a bit informed, because we really try to communicate mental health information in a way that is palatable or digestible for young people. So that's all I have for you guys now. I can take some questions. I don't know.